Welcome to Shredder Fanfic. Like, subscribe, and hype video. Join members to gain early access to new videos. The main character, after dying, gets reborn as Meliodas, the leader of the 7 deadly sins inside of the anime High School DxD. What will Meliodas do inside of High School DxD?
I can't. I won't let him win. Idiot, Konako muttered flatly, wiping blood from her lip as she rejoined the fight. Kaiba stood beside her, his blade ready. We need to find a way to support. Akeno floated higher, sparks building again. Aira, let's see if he enjoys more lightning. Ria's eyes sharpened, her aura flaring. No one stop. Wear him down. Yup, I said, stepping forward with a smirk. Leave the chicken to me. The battlefield shook as the fight pressed on. Chapter 38, The Strain of Immortality. The courtyard burned. Flames danced across shattered stone, licking the walls of the recreated academy. The air was heavy with smoke and heat. Riser stood at the center of it all, wings of fire spread wide. Every wound he had taken was gone, burned away and replaced with perfect flesh. His arrogant smirk never left his face. Do you see now, Rias? He shouted across the courtyard. You cannot win. I am eternal. Your struggle is meaningless. Ria's fists clenched, her blue-green eyes narrowed. I'll never accept you, Riser. No matter what. His smirk widened. Then I'll crush you until you have no choice. I stepped forward casually, brushing dust off my sleeve. Yup. Except you can't. His eyes snapped to me, flames flaring brighter. You dare mock me, worm? Yup, I said with a grin. Chicken. Riser roared, charging forward in a blaze of fire. His fist swung toward me, searing the air. I caught it with one hand, the ground cracking beneath us, before twisting his arm and slamming him into the wall. The stone shattered. For a moment, silence. Then his laughter echoed as he stood again, his body already healed. Futile. Yup, I replied. Still fun though. The others weren't as relaxed. Kaiba darted in from the left, his sword flashing. He slashed Riser's side in a clean cut, only to watch it seal immediately. His calm expression tightened. TCH, he muttered, pulling back before a wave of fire scorched past him. Konako charged forward, her fist slamming into Riser's stomach with enough force to crack stone. He staggered a step, but then laughed as the bruise disappeared instantly. His backhand caught her shoulder, sending her skidding across the courtyard. She grunted, standing quickly. Annoying. Above, Akeno's lightning rained down, striking Riser square in the chest. For a moment his body convulsed under the surge, but the flames burst outward again, burning away the electricity. He smirked up at her. Pathetic. Akeno's smile never faltered. Aira, troublesome. Issei staggered forward, his gauntlet glowing faintly. Boost. The jewel pulsed, and he charged, his fist colliding with Riser's jaw. The impact rocked the air, forcing Riser back. Issei gasped, eyes wide. I did it. But the burn mark on Riser's cheek sealed instantly. He chuckled, before grabbing Issei by the collar and slamming him into the ground. Issei coughed violently, his body trembling. Damn it! Issei-san! Asia cried, rushing forward, her healing glow already spreading over him. Please, hold still. He gritted his teeth, trying to push up. I can still fight. Idiot, Konako muttered flatly as she passed him, her fists clenched. Yup, I added with a grin. Stay down before you croak. Issei groaned loudly, glaring at me through the sweat. Shut up. Yup. The fight dragged on, and it became clear. No matter how many times they struck him, no matter how much damage they dealt, Riser stood tall, unmarked. Kaiba's precise strikes. Konako's brutal punches. Akeno's relentless lightning. Ria's crimson spheres. Even Issei's boosted blows. All meaningless. Each wound sealed instantly, burned away by that cursed regeneration. Ria bit her lip, her aura flaring harder. This is what makes him so dangerous. Riser laughed, spreading his arms as flames surged around him. Do you see, Rias? Your pieces are exhausting themselves. Every strike, every effort wasted. He flared again, a wave of fire sweeping across the courtyard. Kaiba leapt back, Akeno shielded herself midair, and Konako grunted as she shielded her face. Issei collapsed again, his body shaking. Asia knelt beside him, her glow frantic as she tried to keep up. I brushed ash off my shoulder, grinning. Yup. Still a chicken. Riser snarled, lunging at me again. Our clash shook the ground. His flames roared, his fists swung like hammers. I blocked casually, slipping between his blows, slamming my fist into his ribs, my foot into his leg. Each time, his body burned, cracked, broke only to heal again instantly. He laughed through it, his arrogance unshaken. Pointless. You cannot win. Yup, I said, dodging another punch. Still weaker than me. His eyes flared with rage, his flames bursting outward to force me back. On the edge of the battlefield, Issei groaned, clutching his chest. Bibuku, what do? We can't hurt him. Ria's eyes narrowed, her jaw clenched. We'll find a way. We have to. Asia's hands shook as she poured more healing into him. Please, don't give up, Issei-san. He glanced at her, his breath ragged, and managed a weak grin. I won't. Asia-chan. Yup, I called over, smirking even mid-fight. You better not. Issei shouted back, his face red. Don't act like you're cheering me on. Yup, I replied. Akeno giggled softly above, even as sparks flickered between her fingers. Era, you two never change. Konako's eyes flicked between me and Riser as she wiped blood from her lip. Still fighting. Kaiba steadied his sword. We need to focus. Riser's laughter echoed again, flames crackling louder with each pulse. This is the difference between us. You are insects beneath me. And you, Rias, you will be mine. Ria's fists clenched tighter, her aura flaring brighter. Never. He sneered. We'll see. His firestorm erupted, consuming the courtyard again. Everyone staggered, their exhaustion showing. And still, I stood in front, smirking, unshaken. Yup. Still a chicken. Chapter 39, Playing with Fire. Riser's laughter still echoed through the burning courtyard, his body glowing faintly with the heat of his own flames. Every cut, bruise, and burn had already been restored. He spread his arms wide, his voice carrying. You see, Rias? Every blow you land, every drop of effort your pitiful peerage puts into this fight, it all means nothing. Against me, it is useless. Rias glared at him, her crimson aura flaring. You're nothing but arrogant talk, Riser. He smirked wider. Talk backed by immortality. Yup, I said, walking forward with a grin. Immortal chicken. His eyes narrowed instantly. You again. Yup. He snarled, his flames roaring hotter as he lunged toward me. His fist swung, a blazing hammer that scorched the ground. I raised my hand and caught it casually, my grin never fading. Still too slow, I said. Before he could react, I twisted his arm and slammed my fist into his gut. The impact echoed, and his body bent forward before I launched him back into the cracked wall. The courtyard shook. Dust filled the air. And then, his laughter returned. Flames flared, burns closed, bones knitted. He stepped forward again, his smirk returning. Feudal. Yup, I said, strolling closer. Feudal chicken. The others stared. Issei clenched his fists, his face red with frustration. Damn it. He just keeps getting back up. Asia tugged at his sleeve, her healing glow still surrounding his arm. Issei-san, please don't move yet. I can't just sit here while he shows off like that. Issei shouted, pointing at me. And you don't just joke around. Yup, I said cheerfully, still smirking. Jigger. Issei groaned loudly, shaking his head. Akeno giggled softly from above, her violet eyes glinting. Era. Meliodas-kun really is enjoying himself. Kaiba chuckled quietly, though his sword stayed ready. At least someone is calm. Konako chewed another cookie, her voice flat. Still a pervert. Yup, I replied instantly. Riser lunged again, his wings of fire burning brighter. His punch swung wide, but I ducked under it casually and tapped his side with my knuckles. The light blow sent him flying across the courtyard like a ragdoll. He tumbled through rubble, coughing as he stood again, his body already healing. His face twisted in anger. Stop mocking me. Yup, I said, walking closer. He roared, unleashing a torrent of fire so hot the air warped. The flames surged across the courtyard, swallowing everything in their path. I stepped through it calmly, brushing ash from my sleeve. Warm. That all you got? His eyes went wide. Impossible. Yup. I blurred forward, appearing in front of him before he could react. My foot smashed into his chest, sending him flying into the ground hard enough to leave a crater. The ground trembled. The others gasped softly except for Akeno, who giggled again, covering her mouth with delicate fingers. Riser groaned, his flames surging to heal his chest instantly. He pushed himself up, his face red with rage. Stop playing with me. Yup, I said, crouching down in front of him with a grin. Try harder. He roared, swinging wildly. I caught his wrist again, twisting it behind his back and planting my foot on his head, forcing him into the cracked stone. His flames sputtered before flaring again, his body already starting to repair. I let him up casually. Yup. Weak chicken. Issei clenched his fists tighter, his voice trembling. He's just humiliating him. Asia smiled nervously, her voice soft. Meliodas-san is really strong. Yup, I said over my shoulder, grinning. Asia jumped, flustered. Ah! Akeno laughed softly. Era. He's even listening while fighting. Ria's eyes stayed locked on Riser, her jaw tense. Don't lose focus. His regeneration hasn't slowed. We need to find a way to end this. Yup, I replied casually, dodging another wild punch from Riser and slamming him into the ground again. The cycle repeated. He lunged, I blocked. He roared, I grinned. He healed, I knocked him down again. Each time louder. Each time angrier. Each time more humiliated. But never broken. Because each time, his flames restored him, his body whole once again. Do you see? He shouted through clenched teeth, standing tall again even after another beating. No matter how much you hit me, no matter how much you humiliate me, I will always rise again. I smirked, tilting my head. Yup. And I'll always knock you down again. His roar shook the courtyard. Enough. He charged once more, his flames burning hotter than ever. I caught his fist, twisted, and drove my knee into his stomach again. He coughed violently, blood spraying before it burned away. He staggered back, only for my foot to smash into his face, sending him sprawling across the cracked stone. "Yup," I said cheerfully, standing over him. "Down again." The others gathered behind me, watching silently. Issei trembled, his gauntlet glowing faintly. "There's no end to this." Asia's hands clutched together, her voice nervous. We can't keep fighting like this forever." Kaiba's calm tone cut through. "Not unless we find a way to bypass his regeneration." Konako popped another cookie into her mouth, her face expressionless. "Stupid chicken." Akeno floated lower, her smile never fading. "Era. At least he looks ridiculous now." Ria's fists tightened at her sides, her eyes narrowing. "We'll end this. Somehow." I smirked, glancing back at them before turning to Riser again. "Yup. I'll keep the chicken busy." Riser staggered upright once more, his face twisted with rage, his flames roaring. "I'll burn you all to ashes." "Yup," I said, stepping forward with a grin. "Try it." The fight continued, Riser healing and roaring, me knocking him down again and again, until the courtyard itself was nearly unrecognizable. And still, the humiliation grew with each fall. Chapter 40, the end of the game. The courtyard was nearly unrecognizable. Walls shattered, stone cracked, scorch marks spreading across every surface. Fire still burned in patches, the heat radiating across the battlefield. Riser stood hunched forward, his breath heavy, his flames flickering weaker than before. He was burned, battered, and bruised, but every wound closed again, his body restoring itself as if nothing had happened. His eyes, though, were wild, bloodshot with rage. You dare humiliate me like this," he growled, flames licking across his shoulders. "You are nothing compared to a phoenix." I grinned, resting my hands on my hips. "Yup. Nothing. Except the guy who just keeps knocking you down." He roared, charging forward with flames erupting around him. His fist swung, searing the air. I caught it with one hand, twisting his wrist until he cried out, then drove my foot into his chest. He slammed into the cracked ground, the stone trembling under the impact. The courtyard fell silent except for the sound of his coughing. Ria's peerage stood behind me, their exhaustion clear. Kaiba leaned on his sword, his face pale. Konako's uniform was torn, dust covering her. Akeno floated lower, her lightning faded to a small flicker. Asia clutched her skirt, her healing glow faint, and Issei was on one knee, trembling, his gauntlet glowing dimly. Rias herself stood firm, her blue-green eyes sharp, her crimson aura flickering faintly around her. "End this, Meliodas," she said firmly. I smirked. "Yup." Riser staggered to his feet, his flames sparking again as his body healed. His face twisted into a snarl. "You can't kill me. I'll always stand again." "Yup," I said, walking closer casually. "And I'll always put you back down." His eyes went wide as I blurred forward. My fist buried itself in his gut, the impact echoing across the yard. He coughed blood before it burned away, his body healing again instantly. Before he could finish standing upright, I slammed my elbow into his back, dropping him to his knees. He screamed in fury, flames surging around him wildly. "You mock me," he shouted. "I am Riser Phoenix. I am eternal." "Yup," I said, grabbing him by the collar and slamming him face first into the ground. "Eternal punching bag." His face scraped across the stone before he rolled over, coughing violently. His wounds sealed again, but his pride didn't. Issei clenched his fists, watching from behind me. He just keeps getting back up. Asia's hands glowed softly as she touched his shoulder. Please, don't move, Issei-san. I have to do something, he muttered, his voice shaking. Idiot, Konako said flatly, munching the last crumb of a broken cookie. Kaiba spoke calmly, though his voice carried strain. We've done what we can. Now it's up to him. Akeno giggled softly, her violet eyes glinting as she covered her mouth. Ara. Riser really doesn't look very noble now. Yup, I said cheerfully, pressing my foot down on Riser's chest as he tried to stand again. He roared, flames bursting outward in a desperate surge. The heat singed the ground, but I stood firm, unmoved. My grin didn't fade. Not enough, I said. My fist crashed into his jaw, sending him sprawling across the courtyard. He coughed, staggered up again, his flames surging to heal him. I won't lose. I can't lose. Yup, I said. But you already did. Graphia's voice rang out across the battlefield, calm and professional. Riser Fenix's peerage has been eliminated. Only Riser Fenix remains. Riser froze, his eyes going wide. What? Rias lifted her chin, her voice sharp. You're alone now, Riser. It's over. His face twisted, his teeth grinding. No. I am eternal. You cannot defeat me. Yup, I said, walking forward, my grin wide. Watch me. Riser lunged in desperation, his flames exploding higher than before. His fists swung wildly, his voice hoarse with fury. I slipped between his punches easily, my body weaving through the fire. My hand caught his wrist, my knee slammed into his ribs, and my fist cracked against his jaw. Each blow landed clean, his body breaking only to heal again, but slower this time. He gasped, blood spilling before burning away. His healing flames sputtered, weaker than before. Impossible. I am immortal. Yup, I said, grabbing his collar and slamming him into the wall again. Immortal loser. He groaned, flames barely flickering around him now. Asia covered her mouth with her hands, her voice trembling. Is it ending? Issei clenched his fists, his jaw tight. Bucku. Rias nodded firmly, her eyes fixed on Riser. Yes. It's over. Kaiba exhaled, his blade lowering. We've won. Konako blinked, her expression calm. Chickens cooked. Akeno laughed softly, her smile serene. Ara. I lifted Riser by the collar again, his body limp despite the weak flames trying to restore him. His eyes were wide, his pride shattered. Yup, I said casually. You're done. And with one last strike, I slammed him into the ground, his flames sputtering out completely. The courtyard went silent. Graphia's voice echoed clearly. Riser Fenix has been incapacitated. The winner of this raiding game is Rias Gremmery's peerage. The world shimmered as the battlefield began to fade, the magic unraveling. Riser groaned weakly, but his body didn't rise this time. His pride was broken, his humiliation complete. Rias stood tall, her crimson aura fading. It's over. I smirked, brushing dust off my sleeve. Yup. Told you. Chicken's done. The peerage gathered together. Issei collapsed back onto the ground, panting heavily. We actually won. Asia knelt beside him quickly, her glow soothing his trembling arms. Yes, you did it, Issei-san. He laughed weakly, his face flushed. Thanks, Asia-chan. Kaiba leaned on his sword, smiling politely. It was a hard-fought victory. Konako brushed dust off her uniform, her tone flat. Tired. Akeno stretched, her smile calm as ever. Aira, that was fun. Ria stepped forward, her gaze softening as she looked at all of us. Thank you, everyone. You fought well. Yup, I said, grinning. Not bad for scraps. Scraps? Issei shouted, glaring at me. I almost died out there. Yup, I replied casually. He groaned loudly. Ugh. Asia giggled softly, covering her mouth. Rias shook her head faintly, though the corner of her lips twitched. Let's return. The magic circle beneath us glowed brightly, whisking us away from the ruined battlefield. The raiding game was over. Chapter 41, The Gremory Estate. The world of fire and rubble faded away as the glowing magic circle consumed us. My vision shifted, the weight of battle falling off like smoke drifting on the wind. When the light faded, we stood not in a scorched courtyard but in a grand hall. The floor was polished marble, the ceilings arched and high, lined with banners of the Gremory crest. Candles flickered from gilded stands, filling the chamber with a warm light. Ria stood at the front, her crimson hair shimmering under the glow. She exhaled slowly, her aura finally calming. It's over, she said quietly. Issei collapsed onto the polished floor, his boosted gear fading away. I thought I was gonna die. Asia rushed to his side immediately, kneeling as her healing light spread over his bruises. Issei-san, please don't move too much. I can't help it, he groaned, flopping dramatically. Everything hurts. Kaiba leaned on his sword politely, though even his smile was strained. You fought bravely, Issei-kun. Konako sat on the floor without hesitation, pulling a cookie from her pocket and nibbling it calmly. Tired. Akeno stood with her usual grace, her violet eyes glinting as she giggled softly. Aira. That was certainly lively. I stretched my arms above my head, grinning. Yup. Fun little workout. Issei snapped at me instantly, glaring through the pain. Workout? You beat him like it was nothing. Yup, I said casually. His face went red. You. Ugh. Asia covered her mouth, giggling softly despite the tension. Before anyone could say more, a ripple of magic filled the hall. The air shifted, heavier and more dignified. A tall figure stepped forward, his crimson hair flowing down his back, his robes carrying the weight of nobility and power. Surtsk's Lucifer. Ria straightened immediately, her eyes softening. Unii-sama. Surtsk's gaze swept over the group, lingering on Rias before shifting to the rest of us. His smile was calm, almost gentle, though the pressure of his aura was unmistakable. You all did very well. Congratulations, Rias. You fought for your freedom and achieved it. Rias lowered her head respectfully. Thank you. Behind Surtsk's, Grafia appeared, her silver hair gleaming under the light. Her expression remained perfectly composed, her voice steady. The raiding game has officially ended. Rias Gremory is the victor. The engagement between Rias Gremory and Riser Phoenix is annulled. Rias closed her eyes briefly, her shoulders easing. Finally. Riser's voice cracked through the chamber, hoarse but furious. This is unacceptable. Everyone turned as flames flickered weakly in the corner. Riser staggered forward, his once pristine suit scorched and torn. His face was red, twisted in anger, but the arrogance in his voice remained. I am Riser Phoenix. I cannot be humiliated like this. His flames sparked again, though weaker than before. This engagement cannot be annulled. Surtsk's calm voice cut through him like ice. Riser Phoenix. Riser froze, his flames faltering. Surtsk's blue-green eyes narrowed faintly, his tone sharp but measured. You were defeated. You were humiliated not by trickery, but in fair combat. The terms of the rating game were clear. You have lost. Grafia stepped forward, her expression as calm as ever. By official decree, the contract is void. You may not contest it further. Reiser's face contorted, his fists trembling. TCH. I stepped forward casually, grinning at him. Yup. Still a chicken. His head snapped toward me, his face red with fury. Why you little? Before he could finish, Surtsk raised his hand slightly. The pressure in the air grew heavier, silencing Reiser instantly. His teeth ground together, his flames sputtering out. Ria's gaze was sharp as she looked at him. It's over, Reiser. Leave. He glared at her, his pride shattered but not gone. This isn't over. Then, with a flicker of flame, he vanished. The hall was quiet again. Issei exhaled loudly, his whole body sagging. I can't believe it, we actually did it. Asia's healing glow faded as she smiled gently. Yes. Bucko is free now. Rias turned toward us, her lips curving faintly. Thanks to all of you. And especially you, Meliodas. I smirked, folding my arms behind my head. Yup. Happy to roast a chicken anytime. Issei groaned loudly, pointing at me. You make it sound like it was easy. Yup, I replied. His face went red instantly. Grr. Akeno giggled softly. Era, nothing ever changes. Kaiba chuckled politely. It was certainly a unique strategy. Konako munched her cookie, her voice flat. He's still a pervert. Yup, I said cheerfully. Surtsk stepped closer to Rias, his smile softening. I'm proud of you, Rias. You've grown stronger. This was your battle, and you won it with your own resolve. Ria's cheeks flushed slightly. Ani-sama. Grafia bowed her head faintly. You should all rest. The strain of the battle is evident. Lady Rias, your peerage needs recovery. Rias nodded. Yes. Thank you, Grafia. Surtsk's gaze shifted to me briefly, his eyes thoughtful. He smiled faintly. And you? Meliodas. You certainly left an impression. I grinned. Yup. Issei glared at me again. Why does everyone keep praising him? Because he won, Konako replied flatly. Issei collapsed backward onto the floor. Ugh. Asia giggled softly, her cheeks pink. The group began to disperse slightly. Asia fussed over Issei, healing his bruises completely. Kaiba leaned against a column, finally relaxing. Konako laid flat on the floor with her cookie bag resting on her chest. Akeno drifted to Ria's side, her eyes warm. Rias looked at all of us, her voice steady. Rest now. You've all earned it. We'll talk more tomorrow. Yup, I said, dropping onto the floor with a grin. Wake me when there's food. Issei groaned, glaring at me weakly. Why you can't just nap here? Yup. He fell back dramatically again. Ugh. Akeno covered her mouth as she laughed softly. Rias shook her head, though the corner of her lips curved faintly. Unbelievable. Chapter 42, Crimson Curiosity. The hall had grown quieter after Reiser vanished in flames. Ria's peerage spread out across the polished floor, exhaustion pressing down like a heavy blanket. Asia knelt by Issei, healing his bruises while he groaned dramatically. Kaiba leaned against a column, catching his breath. Konako lay flat on the floor with a cookie in hand, and Akeno stood with her usual serene smile, her eyes on Rias. Surtsk stood calmly at the center of the chamber, his crimson hair glowing faintly in the candlelight. Grafia lingered behind him, composed as always, her silver eyes steady. Rias lowered her head slightly, her voice soft but firm. "Thank you, Unii-sama, for honoring the game." Surtsk smiled warmly. "It was your resolve, Rias. You earned your freedom." Ria's cheeks flushed faintly, though she nodded with dignity. He glanced over her peerage, his expression gentle. "You all did well. Truly." Thank you," Asia said softly, bowing her head. Kaiba smiled politely. "It was our honor." Akeno giggled. "Ara, Ara." Konako mumbled around her cookie. "Tired." Issei lifted a trembling fist. We showed him, "Hi, Baku." Rias looked at him fondly. "Yes. You did well, Issei." Issei flushed, scratching his cheek nervously. Surtsk's eyes lingered on me then, his expression thoughtful. "Meliodas," he said lightly. I smirked, folding my hands behind my head. "Yup." He chuckled softly, his voice calm but curious. "You were impressive out there. I hadn't expected someone so efficient at dealing with Riser." "Yup," I said cheerfully. "Roast chicken's easy." Issei groaned instantly. "Why do you keep saying that?" "Because it's true," I said with a grin. "Ugh!" He collapsed back down. Asia giggled softly behind her hands. Grafia stepped forward slightly, her voice even. "Your strength was considerable. Few devils at this level of peerage training could have handled Riser Fenix so thoroughly." Her eyes studied me closely, though her face didn't change. Surtsk nodded faintly. "Indeed. I must admit, I am curious." Ria's eyes widened slightly, her body stiffening. "Unii-sama." He lifted his hand gently. "I mean no offense, Rias. I simply find myself interested in the peer you've gathered." His eyes returned to me, kind but probing. "Tell me, Meliodas, where did you learn to fight like that?" I tilted my head, grinning. "Yup. Practice." He blinked once, then chuckled softly. "Practice, is it?" "Yup." Rias exhaled quietly, her voice firm. "Unii-sama, Meliodas is my piece. That's all that matters." He looked at her fondly. "Of course, Rias. I trust your judgment." Her cheeks warmed slightly, though her eyes stayed sharp. Akeno drifted closer, her smile playful. "Ara, Ara. Meliodas-kun does have a knack for surprising people." Konako rolled onto her side, muttering. "Still a pervert." "Yup," I replied instantly. Issei sat up halfway, glaring at me. Stop saying that so casually." "Yup," I said again, grinning wider. He flopped back down with a loud groan. "Ugh!" Asia smiled nervously. I think Meliodas-san is amazing." Her cheeks turned pink as she lowered her gaze quickly. I smirked. "Yup. Cute too." She squeaked softly, hiding behind her hands. "Ah!" Ria's eyes narrowed sharply. "Meliodas." I grinned at her innocently. "Yup." She sighed heavily, rubbing her temple. "Hopeless." Surtsk chuckled again, his eyes warm. "You're quite the lively group, Rias." Rias gave him a faint smile. "Yes. They're mine." His gaze returned to me, his tone calm but sharper now. "Meliodas. Do you intend to stay with my sister?" "Yup," I said without hesitation, grinning. His eyes studied me for a long moment before he smiled faintly. "Good. Then protect her well." "Yup," I said again. Rias glanced between us, her expression softening slightly. Grafia's voice broke the moment, precise and respectful. Lord Surtsks, the Fenix household has already been notified of the result. They will not contest further. Surtsks nodded. Good. He looked at Rias, his voice gentle again. You're free now, Rias. No one will force you into something you do not want. Rias lowered her head slightly. Thank you. Akeno's smile widened faintly. Era. That's a relief. Kaiba sighed softly. Indeed. Konako sat up, brushing crumbs from her lap. Good. Issei clenched his fists, his eyes bright. That's right. Baku's free because of us. Yup, I said casually. Mostly me. Wah! Issei shouted, pointing at me. Stop hogging the credit. Yup. He collapsed backward again. Ugh. Asia giggled softly again, covering her mouth. Surtsks gave Rias one last smile, his expression proud. I'll leave you all to rest. But know this, Rias, you've grown stronger. And I couldn't be prouder as your brother. Rias' eyes softened, her lips curving faintly. Ani-sama. He turned, his crimson hair swaying as he walked toward the exit. Grafia followed, her presence calm and steady. Before leaving, Surtsks glanced back at me one last time, his smile faint but lingering. Meliodas. I'll be watching with interest. I smirked. Yup. Then, with a ripple of magic, he and Grafia vanished. The hall was quiet again. Rias exhaled slowly, finally relaxing. Everyone, rest now. You've earned it. Kaiba bowed his head slightly. Yes, Baku. Konako lay back down instantly. Nap. Akeno giggled softly. Era. I'll prepare tea later. Issei flopped onto his back. I'm so tired. Asia smiled softly, her glow still faint as she healed his last bruises. You'll be okay, Issei-san. He blushed faintly. Thanks, Asia-chan. Rias turned to me, her eyes narrowing faintly. You enjoyed that too much? I grinned. Yup. She sighed, shaking her head softly, though her lips curved just slightly. Hopeless. Yup, I said again. Chapter 43, Return to Kuaha. The grand hall of the Gremory estate faded as the teleportation circle activated. The glow wrapped around us, the polished marble vanishing, the banners and candles dissolving into light. When the glow cleared, we were back in Kuaha Academy's Occult Research Club room. The familiar wooden floor creaked faintly under our feet. The shelves, the crimson couches, the steaming teapot on the table, it was all normal again, like we hadn't just gone through a brutal raiding game. Rias sat down at her desk first, her crimson hair flowing behind her. She let out a slow breath, her expression soft but tired. It's done, she said quietly. Kaiba exhaled, lowering himself into one of the couches. His polite smile stayed, but the exhaustion showed in his posture. That was more difficult than I imagined. Konako dropped onto the couch beside him without hesitation. She pulled another cookie from her pocket, biting into it with her usual calm. Tired. Issei collapsed onto the other couch, arms spread wide. I thought I was gonna die like 10 times out there. Asia quickly hurried to his side, kneeling beside the couch. Her healing light glowed gently as she placed her hands on his arm. Issei-san, please, you pushed yourself too much again. He groaned dramatically. I had to, Asia-chan. If I didn't, who else was gonna help Baku? Yup, I said cheerfully, sitting on the arm of the couch. Me. Issei sat up halfway, his face red. Why you don't have to say it like that? Yup. He collapsed back down with a groan. Ugh. Asia giggled softly, though her cheeks turned pink. Akeno floated over gracefully, setting a tray of tea down on the table. Her violet eyes glinted as she smiled. Aira, Aira. Everyone deserves to relax now. Kaiba accepted a cup politely. Thank you, Akeno-san. Konako reached out without a word, grabbing one as well. Issei sniffed the cup Asia gave him, still groaning. This isn't alcohol, right? Tea, ise, Rias said firmly from her desk. Ah, he sighed loudly, sipping it anyway. I leaned over the table, grinning. Yup. Could use some ale though. Meliodas, Rias said sharply, her eyes narrowing. Yup, I said innocently. She sighed, shaking her head. Hopeless. Asia moved from Issei to Konako, her healing glow brushing over the bruises on the white-haired girl's arms. Konako blinked, looking down at the light. Thanks. Asia smiled warmly. You're welcome. She moved to Kaiba next, her glow soothing the cuts along his side. You're very skilled, Asia-san, Kaiba said politely. Thank you. Her cheeks flushed pink. I only did what I could. Finally, she came to me. She hesitated for a moment before placing her glowing hands on my arm. Meliodas-san, even if you didn't look hurt, maybe, just in case. I smirked at her. Yup. Pretty hands too. Her face turned bright red instantly. Ah. Ria's voice snapped from her desk. Meliodas. I looked over at her with my grin. Yup. She rubbed her temple again, sighing heavily. Hopeless. Asia squeaked, pulling her hands back quickly, though she peeked up shyly. The room grew quiet for a while, the exhaustion settling in. The only sounds were the clink of cups and the soft hum of Asia's healing glow. Finally, Ria stood, her presence drawing everyone's attention. Everyone, you've done enough for today. Rest. Tomorrow, we'll return to normal. Baku, Issei said softly, sitting up. She looked at him, her eyes warm. You did well, Issei. All of you did. I'm proud of my peerage. Kaiba smiled faintly. Thank you. Konako blinked once, still chewing her cookie. Good. Akeno's smile softened as she poured herself tea. Aira, Aira, that means a lot. Asia's eyes shimmered with emotion. Rias Onisama. Rias gave her a gentle smile. Thank you, Asia. Yup, I said cheerfully. Not bad. Issei groaned again, pointing at me. Stop acting like you carried everything. Yup, I replied. He collapsed back onto the couch. Ugh. Akeno covered her mouth as she laughed softly. As the evening stretched on, the group slowly relaxed further. Konako curled up on her side of the couch, her cookie bag on her lap. Kaiba leaned back, his eyes closed but his breathing calm. Asia sat quietly, sipping her tea with a small smile. Issei grumbled occasionally but stayed seated, his shoulders finally loosening. Ria sat at her desk, her eyes sweeping over everyone with quiet pride. I leaned back, my grin never fading. Yup. Not a bad family you've got, Rias. Her eyes flicked to me, her lips curving faintly. Yes. They're mine. I smirked wider. Yup. Lucky you. She rolled her eyes faintly, though her expression softened. It was well past dark when Rias finally stood again. That's enough for tonight. Everyone, go home. Get some sleep. Kaiba opened his eyes, nodding. Understood, Baku. Konako stretched slightly, pocketing her empty cookie bag. Sleep. Akeno smiled warmly. Aira, Aira. I'll walk with you, Rias. Issei stood unsteadily, wobbling. I guess I should get back too. Asia quickly stepped beside him. I'll go with you, Issei-san. He blushed faintly, scratching his cheek. Thanks, Asia-chan. Rias nodded, her voice steady. Good. Rest well, all of you. Tomorrow we return to school as normal. Everyone murmured their agreements before filing out slowly. I stretched again, smirking as I followed. Yup. Normal school, huh? Guess I'll try it out. Try behaving, Rias muttered, brushing past me. I grinned at her. Yup. No promises. She sighed heavily, though her lips twitched faintly upward as she led us out into the cool night. Chapter 44, Back to School. Morning light streamed through the windows of Kua Academy. The school grounds buzzed with the usual chatter of students, the rhythm of another day beginning. I walked across the courtyard with my hands tucked behind my head, a grin on my face. The students around us moved as normal, unaware of the raiding game that had nearly torn us apart the night before. Beside me, Issei dragged his feet, yawning loudly. Ugh, my body's still sore. Asia walked just behind him, clutching her school bag with both hands. Issei-san, are you really okay? Maybe you should have stayed home and rested. He forced a grin, waving her off. I am fine, Asia-chan. Can't miss school just cause of a little thing like that. Yup, I said cheerfully. Until you collapse. Issei spun around, glaring at me with a red face. I won't collapse. Yup. He groaned loudly, turning back around. Ugh. Asia giggled softly behind her hand, her cheeks warm. Kaiba walked slightly ahead of us, his posture perfect, his polite smile never wavering. It's refreshing to see the school again. Almost as if nothing happened. Konako walked at his side, a cookie in her hand as always. She took a slow bite, her voice flat. Still tired? You ate 5 bags last night, I said, grinning. She glanced at me with her golden eyes, chewing slowly. So? Yup. Cute. Her brow twitched faintly. Pervert. Yup, I replied instantly. Akeno walked just behind Rias, her violet eyes glinting as her lips curled into her usual smile. Aira, Aira. Everyone looks so lively this morning. Issei nearly tripped on the steps leading inside. Lively? I feel like I got hit by a truck. Yup, I said, leaning over him with a grin. You look like it too. His face turned bright red. Shut up. Yup. Asia pressed her hands together, flustered. Please don't fight already. Inside the classroom, the atmosphere was just as noisy as ever. Students bustled to their seats, conversations bouncing across the room. Issei slumped into his desk with a groan. Finally. I can just sit down. Asia sat beside him, arranging her books neatly. She smiled softly. It's nice to be here with everyone. Kaiba, across the room, greeted classmates politely, his calm voice soothing. A group of girls gathered around him almost immediately, their faces bright as they chatted. Konako sat near the window, staring out blankly as she chewed another cookie. I leaned on the edge of Issei's desk, grinning. Yup. Looks like fun. Issei groaned, pushing at me. Why you read too close? Yup. He slammed his head onto the desk. Ugh. Asia giggled softly again. Classes passed slowly. The teachers droned on, the chalk screeching faintly against the boards. Issei yawned through most of it, his head nearly falling onto his desk again. Asia scribbled notes diligently, her brow furrowed in concentration. Kaiba remained perfectly attentive, offering polite answers whenever called on. Konako nibbled her cookies under the desk, unbothered. I leaned back in my chair, arms folded behind my head, smirking whenever the teacher's gaze flicked my way. By lunch, the class buzzed with the usual energy again. On the rooftop, the peerage gathered together. The breeze was light, the sun bright. Rias leaned against the railing, her crimson hair flowing in the wind. She looked out over the school grounds, her expression calm but distant. Kaiba sat neatly on the bench, unwrapping his lunch. It feels strange to be here after yesterday. Konako sat beside him, already halfway through a bag of cookies. School's better. Issei slammed his lunchbox onto the bench, glaring at her. How can you say that? We almost died yesterday. She blinked at him slowly. You almost died. Wah! Issei shouted, his face red. I smirked, sitting cross-legged on the ground. Yup. Issei pointed at me furiously. Stop agreeing with her. Yup. Asia clutched her lunch delicately, her eyes soft. I am just glad everyone is safe. Rias turned her gaze to her. Yes. We are. Akeno giggled softly, pouring tea from her thermos into small cups. Era. Yesterday was quite the sight. But today is peaceful. Issei slammed his fist on the bench. It's not peaceful when you say it like that. Yup, I said cheerfully. It's peaceful for me. Issei groaned, slumping back again. Asia smiled faintly, covering her mouth. The rooftop filled with the quiet clink of chopsticks and the crunch of cookies. For a while, no one spoke, the calm settling over us like a blanket. Finally, Rias broke the silence. You all did well yesterday. Truly. Kaiba bowed his head slightly. Thank you, Baku. Konako chewed, unfazed. Humph. Akeno's smile deepened. Era. Praise from Rias is always nice to hear. Asia's eyes sparkled faintly. Rias Onisima. Rias looked at me then, her voice sharper. And you? I grinned back. Yup. Don't think I didn't notice how much you enjoyed yourself. Yup, I said proudly. Her hand pressed against her temple, her sigh soft. Hopeless. Issei exploded from his seat, pointing again. See? Even Baku thinks so. Yup. Ugh! He collapsed back down. Asia giggled again, her cheeks red. As the bell rang, the group packed up their lunches. Rias stood, her voice firm but calm. Back to class. We still have appearances to keep. Kaiba rose gracefully, offering a polite nod. Of course. Konako pocketed another cookie. Issei groaned loudly, dragging himself upright. I'm not ready for math. Asia smiled gently. I'll help you later, Issei-san. He blushed instantly. Really? Thanks, Asia-chan. I grinned. Yup. Lovebirds already. Wah. Issei's face turned crimson. Shut up. Asia squeaked, flustered, hiding her face. Rias sighed again, though her lips curved faintly as she led the way back inside. Chapter 45, A Vow for Strength. The final bell rang through Kyoa Academy, signaling the end of the day. Students poured out into the courtyard, laughter and chatter filling the air. The sun was beginning to dip, painting the windows with a warm glow. Our group gathered outside the school gates, as always. Rias led us with quiet authority, her crimson hair catching the light. Akeno walked beside her, her lips curved in their usual serene smile. Issei trudged along behind them, dragging his feet with his bag slung over his shoulder. He looked miserable. Asia hovered nervously at his side, her hands clasped together. Issei-san, you still look tired, maybe you should. I'm fine, Asia-chan, he interrupted quickly, forcing a grin that looked more pained than reassuring. Yup, I said, walking with my hands tucked behind my head. You look like crap. He whipped around, his face red. Why do you always say it like that? Because it's true, I said with a grin. Ugh, he groaned, turning back around. Asia giggled softly, though her cheeks warmed as she tried to hide it. Konako walked at her usual calm pace, munching on a cookie without a word. Kaiba stayed by her side, smiling faintly as he carried his bag. The walk back to the clubroom was quiet, save for Issei's occasional muttering and Asia's soft attempts to reassure him. By the time we reached the Occult Research Club, the sun was dipping lower, casting long shadows across the wooden floor. The room smelled faintly of Tia Keno's doing, as she always made sure it was ready. Ria sat at her desk immediately, placing her bag neatly beside her. She looked over the group, her calm voice cutting through the quiet. Everyone, sit down. We all did. Kaiba took one of the couches gracefully. Konako sat beside him, pulling another cookie from her pocket. Asia perched gently on the other couch, her hands folded in her lap. Issei dropped heavily onto the same couch, his face twisted with frustration. I hopped onto the arm of his couch, smirking. Akeno floated around the room, pouring tea into cups and handing them out. Now, Rias began, folding her hands on the desk, we need to talk about what comes next. The rating game is behind us, but we can't remain stagnant. We need to grow stronger as a peerage. Issei clenched his fists instantly, blurting out, that's it. That's what I'm mad about. Everyone looked at him. He jumped up from the couch, his face red and his voice loud. I was useless in that fight. Useless. Asia's eyes widened. Issei-san. He pointed at himself furiously. All I did was get beat up and scream for help. Meliodas beat Riser like he was nothing. Even Kaiba and Konako fought better than me. Even Asia did more by healing everyone. Asia flinched, lowering her head. I only. Don't put yourself down, Asia-chan, he shouted quickly, then groaned, gripping his hair. I'm the one who's useless here. I smirked at him. Yup. Don't agree with me, he yelled, spinning toward me, his face red. Yup, I said again. He grabbed his hair tighter, his voice cracking. Grr. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Yup. He collapsed back onto the couch, groaning loudly. Ugh. Asia looked at him with worry, her eyes shimmering. Issei-san. Ria's voice cut through the tension, sharp but calm. Issei. Enough. He looked up at her, frustrated. Bucku. Her eyes narrowed faintly. You fought bravely. You are not useless. He clenched his fists again, his voice lower now. But I couldn't even scratch him. If Meliodas wasn't here, we would have lost. I hate that feeling. I hate being weak. The room fell quiet. Asia's hands tightened on her skirt, her lips pressed together. Kaiba looked down slightly, thoughtful. Konako chewed slowly, her eyes on Issei. Akeno watched from the side with her serene smile, though her eyes held faint amusement. Ria sighed softly, standing from her desk. She walked toward Issei, her voice firm. You have potential, Issei. But potential alone won't win battles. If you hate being weak, then you must work harder. He looked up at her, his eyes wide. Work harder. Exactly. She folded her arms. You'll train harder than ever. You'll push yourself further. And we'll guide you. That's what it means to be part of my peerage. Issei's jaw clenched, his fists tightening. I'll do it. I'll train harder. I'll get stronger. I swear it. Asia smiled softly. Issei-san. I smirked, leaning down close to his ear. Yup. About time you grew a pair. He jumped, shoving me away. Shut up. Yup, I said, grinning wider. Grr, he shouted, shaking his fists. Konako munched another cookie. Loud. Akeno giggled softly, covering her mouth. Era, era. Such spirit. Kaiba chuckled politely. That's the Issei-kun I know. Rias looked at him one last time, her voice steady. Then prove it, Issei. To yourself, to me, and to everyone here. He nodded fiercely. I will, Baku. The room quieted again as Akeno set tea in front of everyone. Asia sipped hers quietly, sneaking glances at Issei. Kaiba drank his with his usual grace. Konako ate cookies between sips, her face blank. Issei leaned back, still grumbling under his breath, but the determination in his eyes burned brighter. I leaned back too, smirking. Yup. Guess this might be fun after all. Rias glanced at me, her lips twitching faintly. You'll help him, won't you? Yup, I said cheerfully. Issei jumped, glaring at me. I don't want your pity. Not pity, I said, grinning. Training. His eyes widened. Training. Yup. He blinked rapidly, then clenched his fists again. Fine. Then I'll take it. I smirked wider. Yup. Hope you don't cry. His face went red instantly. I won't. Yup. Grr. Asia giggled softly again, her cheeks pink. The sun dipped lower as the peerage finished their tea. The exhaustion of the previous night still lingered, but the tension had shifted. Issei's vow hung in the air, pulling everyone into quiet reflection. Rias finally stood, her voice firm. That's enough for today. Go home and rest. Tomorrow, we begin again. Everyone nodded in agreement. As we filed out of the club room, I grinned to myself. Yup. Things are just getting interesting. Chapter 46, Quiet Encouragement. The night air was cool as we stepped out of the Occult Research Club. The street lamps flickered faintly, casting light across the quiet path that wound through the campus. The rest of the students had long since gone home, leaving the place still and calm. Rias led the way, her crimson hair swaying as she glanced back at us. Everyone, get some sleep. Tomorrow, training begins. Kaiba bowed politely. Understood. Konako yawned softly, clutching her bag. Cookies at home. Akeno giggled gently, her violet eyes glinting. Era, era. I'll walk with you, Rias. The two moved ahead together. Kaiba followed at a relaxed pace, and Konako shuffled along quietly, her bag slung lazily over her shoulder. That left Issei, Asia, and me walking at the rear. Issei sighed loudly, his shoulders slumped. Man! I really embarrassed myself today. Asia looked at him quickly, her hands gripping her bag tightly. And no, Issei-san. You didn't embarrass yourself at all. Yup, I said cheerfully. You were pathetic. Hey! Issei yelled, spinning toward me, his face red. Don't just say it like that. Yup, I repeated with a grin. Asia puffed her cheeks faintly, looking between us nervously. Issei-san wasn't pathetic. He sighed again, rubbing the back of his head. Asia-chan. The others ahead of us slowly disappeared down the path, leaving just the three of us walking under the glow of the lamps. When we reached the street corner, Rias glanced back once more. Asia, you'll be staying with Issei tonight? Don't stay up too late. Asia nodded quickly, her cheeks pink. Why yes, Rias Onisama. Issei stammered, scratching his cheek. Wait, what? Baku. Rias smiled faintly, turning away. Good night. Wait. Issei shouted again, but Rias was already gone with Akeno, their laughter faint in the distance. Kaiba and Konako trailed after them, leaving the two of us standing with Asia. Issei turned to me, his face red. Why, you heard her, right? Why me? I smirked. Yup. Love hotel vibes. Wah. It's not like that, he yelled instantly. Asia flailed her hands, her face glowing. It's not like that, Meliodas-san. Yup, I said, grinning wider. Both of them sputtered, their faces red. We finally arrived at Issei's house. He fumbled with his keys, muttering under his breath. Why does Baku always do this to me? Asia followed quietly, her eyes soft. I leaned against the wall outside, watching. Inside, the house was dim, quiet except for the faint hum of appliances. Asia placed her bag neatly by the door, bowing slightly. Excuse me for intruding again. Issei scratched his cheek, still flustered. It's fine, Asia-chan. You're always welcome here. Her smile brightened faintly, her eyes softening. I wandered in casually, flopping onto the couch. Yup. Nice place. Issei glared at me. Don't just make yourself at home. Yup. Ugh. He dragged himself upstairs to change, muttering about how unfair everything was. That left me and Asia downstairs. She fidgeted with her skirt, glancing toward the stairs before turning her gaze to me. Meliodas-san, she said softly. Yup. I answered, tilting my head with a grin. Her hands tightened. Issei-san, he's really trying, isn't he? Yup. He's pathetic, but he's trying. Her eyes widened faintly. Pathetic. Yup, I said again, still grinning. That's why it's good. People who are pathetic but still fight anyway? They're the ones who get stronger. She lowered her gaze, her cheeks pink. I don't think Issei-san is pathetic. I think, he's kind. And brave. And her voice trailed off, her blush deepening. I smirked. Yup. You like him? She squeaked, covering her face with her hands. Yup. Issei stomped back downstairs just then, still grumbling. Man, I swear Baku's trying to kill me with stress. Asia's hands dropped quickly, though her blush didn't fade. He sat heavily on the couch across from me, glaring. And what are you grinning at? Yup. You. Ugh. He collapsed back, covering his face. The room was quiet for a while, only the sound of the clock ticking faintly. Asia sat beside Issei, her expression nervous but determined. Issei-san, she said softly. He peeked at her through his fingers. Her hands tightened on her skirt again. I don't think you're useless. I know you said that earlier, but I don't believe it. He sat up slightly, blinking at her. Asia-chan. She looked straight at him, her voice trembling but clear. You protected me, Issei-san. From Rainare, from everything. Even when you're scared, you still stand up. That's not useless. That's amazing. His face went red instantly. Asia-chan. I smirked from the couch. Yup. Lovebirds. Shut up. Issei shouted, his face blazing. Asia covered her mouth, flustered, but she didn't look away. So, please don't call yourself useless anymore. Because to me, you're not. Issei froze, staring at her. Slowly, his hands clenched again, but this time there was fire in his eyes. I'll get stronger. For you too, Asia-chan. Her cheeks glowed brighter, and she nodded softly. Why yes. I leaned back with a grin. Yup. Now kiss. Shut up, they both shouted at the same time, their faces burning. The rest of the night passed quietly. Asia helped tidy the table, humming softly as she worked. Issei flopped around the couch, still muttering about how unfair things were. I dozed off and on, grinning every time either of them glanced at the other and looked away in embarrassment. By the time the clock struck midnight, Asia had curled up on the guest futon, fast asleep. Issei sat on the edge of the couch, staring at the ceiling. I'll get stronger, he whispered. I swear it. I cracked an eye open, smirking. Yup. You better. He looked at me, his face still red, but he nodded firmly. Yet. Chapter 47, Akeno's Teasing. The morning sun glowed over Kyoa Academy as students shuffled into the courtyard, chattering and laughing. The peerage gathered by the gates as always, standing out without even trying. Rias led us in, her crimson hair flowing like always, her expression calm but commanding. Kaiba walked gracefully at her side, smiling politely as he greeted passing students. Konako trailed quietly, munching on a cookie without concern. Issei stumbled along behind them, still yawning. Man! I didn't sleep at all last night. Asia walked close to him, her hands clasped in front of her chest. Issei-san, you were up late again, weren't you? He forced a grin. It's fine, Asia-chan. I'm used to it. Yup, I said, walking casually with my hands behind my head. He cried himself to sleep. Issei spun, his face red. I did not. Yup. Ugh, he groaned, spinning back around. Asia giggled softly behind her hand, though her cheeks turned pink. Classes dragged by as usual. Teachers rambled on, the chalk screeched faintly across the board, and Issei struggled to stay awake at his desk. Asia sat perfectly upright beside him, taking neat notes, her concentration absolute. Kaiba answered politely whenever called on, his classmates swooning. Konako munched quietly under her desk, unbothered. I leaned back in my chair, arms folded, smirking whenever the teacher looked my way. By the time lunch rolled around, the rooftop was waiting for us again. The breeze was soft, carrying the smell of grass. Rias leaned on the railing, her sharp eyes surveying the schoolyard below. Kaiba opened his lunch neatly, while Konako sat beside him with a bag of cookies. Issei flopped onto the bench, groaning. I'm dying. Asia quickly opened her lunch beside him. Please eat something, Issei-san. You'll feel better. He perked up slightly. Asia-chan, you're too kind. I smirked from where I was sitting cross-legged. Yup. Lovebirds. Shut up. Issei shouted, red-faced. Asia squeaked softly, looking down. That's when Akeno walked over, her thermos in hand, her violet eyes sparkling. She smiled as she stopped beside me, her tone dripping with amusement. Ara. Meliodas-kun. Yup. I answered with a grin. She tilted her head, her long black hair swaying. You're always so playful. I wonder, is that how you always are? Yup. Her smile deepened, and she crouched slightly, leaning closer. even in serious situations. Yup. Issei sat up instantly, pointing. Hey. Don't just get that close. Akeno giggled softly, covering her mouth. Ara. Someone's jealous. I am not jealous. Issei shouted. I smirked at him. Yup. He is. Ugh. He collapsed back again. Asia fidgeted nervously beside him, her eyes darting between us. Akeno straightened slightly, pouring me a cup of tea from her thermos. She held it out with a sly smile. Would you like some, Meliodas-kun? Yup. I took it with a grin. She leaned closer as I drank, her voice dropping. Ara, you don't even flinch, do you? Yup. Her eyes glinted with amusement. Interesting. Issei jumped up again, his face red. Stop playing around with him, Akeno-san. She giggled softly. But it's fun. Not for me, he shouted. Yup, I said, smirking. For me it is. Grr, he growled, shaking his fists. Konako looked over blankly, chewing. Pervert. Yup, I replied instantly. Ria sighed faintly from the railing, though her lips curved slightly. Honestly. Lunch passed in its usual rhythm. The clink of chopsticks, the rustle of wrappers, the crunch of Konako's cookies filled the air. But Akeno's gaze lingered on me more than usual, her smile never fading. When the bell rang, we packed up. Ria stood first, her voice calm. Back to class. Kaiba nodded politely. Yes, Baku. Konako pocketed another cookie. Issei grumbled as he dragged himself up. Man. I'm not ready for history. Asia smiled faintly. I'll help you later, Issei-san. He brightened instantly. Thanks, Asia-chan. Yup. Lovebirds, I said again with a grin. They both turned red instantly. Shut up. Akeno covered her mouth, laughing softly. Ara. After classes ended, we returned to the Orc. The club room was quiet, the smell of tea already filling the air again. Ria sat at her desk, opening a folder. Tomorrow we begin training. Be prepared. Kaiba bowed his head. Of course. Konako sat with her cookies again, silent. Issei clenched his fists, his eyes burning with determination. I'll be ready, Baku. Asia nodded quickly, smiling softly. Me too. Yup, I said cheerfully. Should be fun. Rias looked at me with narrowed eyes. Don't cause trouble. Yup, I replied innocently. Akeno drifted closer, setting a cup of tea in front of me again. Her voice was smooth, teasing. Ara. I wonder how much trouble you'll really cause. I smirked back at her. Yup. A lot. She laughed softly, her violet eyes narrowing faintly. I'll be looking forward to it. Issei groaned loudly, collapsing onto the couch. Why does it always feel like I'm surrounded by maniacs? Yup, I said. Ugh. Asia giggled softly again, her cheeks pink. Chapter 48, First Day of Training. The sun was high above Kuah town, casting warm light over the clearing. A crimson barrier shimmered faintly around the area, sealing it off from the human world. Birds outside the barrier scattered away, their cries muffled by the magic. We stood inside the training ground. The space stretched wide, flat dirt, scattered boulders, and targets set up along the far edge. The air was calm, the perfect stage for breaking bones and testing limits. Ria stood in the center, her crimson hair flowing, her hands folded calmly in front of her. This will be our first official training session as a peerage. I expect everyone to give their best effort. Her sharp eyes swept over us. Kaiba, standing straight with his sword in hand, Konako, holding her fists loosely at her sides, Akeno, smiling softly as sparks of electricity already danced along her fingertips, Issei, fidgeting nervously with his gauntlet, Asia, clutching her hands in front of her chest. And me, leaning back with my arms behind my head, grinning. Yup, I said. Ria sighed faintly, though her lips twitched just slightly. Hopeless. She turned back to the group, her voice steady. The focus today will be on Issei and Asia. The rest of you will rotate in to assist them. Issei, you must learn to use your boosted gear more effectively. Asia, you need to heal quickly and under pressure. Understood. Issei snapped to attention, his voice loud. Why yes, Baku. Asia nodded quickly, her cheeks pink. Why yes. Good. Rias looked at me. Meliodas. Help Issei push himself. I smirked wider. Yup. I'll break him. Issei nearly tripped. Wabaku. Yup, I repeated cheerfully. Rias closed her eyes briefly, sighing. Don't kill him. Yup, I said innocently. The first drill began. Issei stood facing me, his boosted gear glowing faintly on his arm. The red jewel pulsed weakly as his breathing quickened. Boost. The voice from the gauntlet echoed, the glow flaring slightly. He grinned nervously. Ha! See that? Already powered up. I tilted my head, still grinning. Yup. Do it again. Boost. The jewel pulsed brighter. Sweat beaded on his forehead already. Again. Boost. The glow grew. His shoulders slumped. Again. Be boost. He collapsed to his knees. Ugh. I can't just keep doing it non-stop. Yup, I said cheerfully, stepping closer. Then get stronger. His face went red as he pushed himself back up. Grr. On the far side of the field, Kaiba sparred with Konako, their strikes echoing sharply. His sword clashed against her fists, the impact rattling across the dirt. Konako's eyes narrowed faintly as she pushed forward, her small form unyielding. Good, Konako, Kaiba said politely, blocking another strike. She answered simply, you're too soft. Akeno stood beside them, her soft laugh filling the air. Lightning arced from her hand, blasting a nearby target into ash. Era. I suppose I should hold back, or the training ground might vanish. Ria stood watching calmly, her arms folded. Control, Akeno. Not destruction. Era, Akeno giggled, lowering the sparks. Asia stood trembling at the edge of the field, her hands glowing faintly with green light. She turned to me nervously. Meliodas-san, how do I practice? I smirked at her. Yup. Heal him when I break him. Her eyes widened. Wah. Issei screamed from the dirt. Wait, what? Yup, I said, stepping forward. Issei scrambled up, his boosted gear flaring weakly. Bibaku, he's serious. Ria's voice cut through calmly. Do it, Issei. If you can't handle Meliodas, you won't survive a real fight. He paled instantly. Why you reciting with him? Yup, I said with a grin, already closing the gap. The next hour was a blur of shouting, sweating, and me casually knocking Issei flat on his back every few minutes. Each time, Asia rushed forward, her healing glow surrounding him, her soft voice trembling. Please hold still, Issei-san. Grr. I am holding still, he shouted through the glow. Yup. Cry louder, I said cheerfully, crouching beside them. Shut up, he screamed. Yup, I replied. Asia giggled softly, though her cheeks turned pink. By the time the sun had shifted overhead, Issei lay sprawled on the dirt, panting heavily. His boosted gear flickered weakly before vanishing entirely. I can't move, he groaned. Asia knelt beside him, her light shimmering as she pressed her hands gently to his chest. Why you can, Issei-san? Just a little more. He looked at her with tired eyes, then clenched his fists again. Fine. I'll keep going. I smirked down at him. Yup. Good boy. His face went red instantly. Don't say it like that. Yup. Grr. Rias finally raised her hand. That's enough for today. Issei collapsed flat with relief. Thank you, Baku. Asia sighed softly, her glow fading as she leaned back. I'll get better too. You did well, Rias said firmly, her eyes softening. Both of you. Akeno giggled from the side, her lightning fading. Era. They were lively. Kaiba lowered his sword gracefully. It was productive. Konako munched her cookie calmly. Hungry. I stretched my arms, smirking. Yup. Not bad. Rias glanced at me, narrowing her eyes faintly. You enjoyed that too much? Yup, I said cheerfully. She sighed, turning back to the group. Everyone, rest. Tomorrow, we continue. Chapter 49, A Private Request. The crimson barrier surrounding the training ground finally dissolved, fading into the evening sky. The hum of magic disappeared, replaced by the natural sounds of crickets and rustling leaves. Rias lowered her hand, her voice calm but firm. That's enough for today. Everyone go home and rest. Kaiba sheathed his sword neatly, bowing slightly. Understood. Konako brushed dirt from her skirt, still chewing on a cookie she had pulled from her pocket. Hungry. Akeno wiped her hands gracefully, sparks fading from her fingertips. Her smile never faltered. Era. That was enjoyable. Issei lay flat on the dirt, his chest rising and falling heavily. I can't move. Asia knelt beside him, her healing glow already easing over his chest. Issei-san, please hold still, you'll feel better soon. I leaned back against a boulder, smirking with my arms folded. Yup. You'll live. Issei groaned, glaring weakly. You're enjoying this way too much. Yup, I said cheerfully. He slammed his head back onto the ground. Ugh. The group slowly packed up. Kaiba and Konako walked toward the path together, silent but calm. Akeno followed Rias, her laugh drifting faintly through the evening. Asia fussed over Issei until Rias called her name gently. Asia, come. He'll manage the rest himself. Asia hesitated, her hands glowing faintly. But. Issei sat up quickly, forcing a grin. I'll be fine, Asia-chan. Don't worry. She lowered her hands reluctantly. Oh okay. She hurried to join the others. Soon, only the two of us remained. Issei sat on the ground, his fists clenched. He stayed quiet for a while, his breathing uneven. Finally, he looked up at me. Meliodas. Yup. I answered with my grin. His jaw tightened. Train me. I tilted my head. Yup. Already did. He shook his head quickly, his voice louder now. No, I mean seriously. Not just knocking me around until I collapse. I need to get stronger, fast. Please. I can't keep being the weakest one. I smirked wider, stepping closer. Yup. You're pathetic. His face went red. Don't just say that. Yup. But you don't quit, I said simply, crouching in front of him. He blinked, caught off guard. What? Yup. You're weak. You get beat up. You cry. But you don't quit. That's why you'll get stronger. For a moment, he just stared. Then his fists tightened again, his eyes burning. Then, you'll help me. I grinned. Yup. But you'll regret asking. He swallowed nervously, but his voice stayed firm. I don't care. Do it. The first lesson started right there. Stand up, I ordered, grinning. Issei scrambled up, his boosted gear flashing weakly onto his arm. Boost, the gauntlet echoed. Again. Boost. The jewel glowed brighter. His teeth grit. Again. Boost. He groaned, clutching his arm. It's so heavy. Yup. Now run. His head snapped toward me. Run? In this? Yup. He groaned again but forced himself forward, stumbling around the training ground with the glowing gauntlet. Dust kicked up with each step, his breaths ragged. F faster. I shouted. I am trying, he yelled back. Yup. Try harder. Grr. He pushed harder, his legs wobbling but carrying him forward. By the time he finished, he collapsed flat onto the dirt again. I can't breathe. I crouched beside him, smirking. Yup. Not bad. He blinked up at me, confused. Not bad. Yup. You didn't quit. Slowly, his lips curled into a tired grin. Then. I'll keep going. I patted his shoulder with a grin. Yup. Tomorrow, double. His face twisted instantly. D-double. Yup. He groaned, collapsing again. Ugh. As we walked back toward town, the sky fully dark now, Rias was waiting near the path. Her arms were folded, her sharp eyes focused on us. Issei, she said firmly, you should rest. I will, Bucko, he said quickly, his voice trembling from exhaustion. Her gaze shifted to me. And you? Don't overdo it. I grinned. Yup. She sighed faintly, rubbing her temple. Hopeless. Back at Issei's house, Asia was waiting at the door. Her eyes widened when she saw him stumble in, half dead. Issei-san. She rushed forward, her hands glowing. You pushed yourself too hard again. He smiled weakly. I asked him to, Asia-chan. I have to get stronger. Her light washed over him, soothing his bruises. She bit her lip softly, but she nodded. Then. I'll support you. Issei smiled faintly, and I smirked behind them. Yup. Lovebirds. Shut up, he shouted, his face red. Asia squeaked, her cheeks pink. Yup, I said cheerfully. Chapter 50, Kaiba grows quiet. Morning training began as the barrier closed around the field. The glow settled, the hum steadied, and heat rose off the dirt. Ria stood in the center with her arms folded, posture straight, voice steady. Positions, she said. Kaiba unsheathed his sword and moved to the left lane, shoulders relaxed, face calm. Konako loosened her wrists and walked to the boulders for raw strength drills. Akeno hovered a little above the ground with a small smile, current already gathering between her fingers. Asia stood near the med table, hands clasped, eyes alert. Issei fumbled with his gauntlet and looked like he wanted to lie down and sleep on the spot. I grinned and rolled my neck. Yup. Rias glanced at me with a narrow-eyed look. No random stunts. Yup. First, warm UPS, she said, turning. Konako, boulder lifts. Kaiba, speed patterns. Akeno, slow release arcs. Issei boost cycles with control. Asia, we'll start you on timed healing intervals. Issei stiffened. See, can we start with T? No, Rias said. Right, he raised his arm. Boost. The jewel flickered. A second later he grimaced. It's heavy again. Yup, I said. Heavier every time. That's the point. Don't sound so happy about it. I kept grinning. Kaiba dashed forward into his run. His feet cut straight lines. He crossed the field, turned on one heel, sliced the air, repeated. Clean. Precise. But the rhythm was off by a fraction. I watched the shoulder tell on the step, then the step correct the shoulder. Tiny things. He still looked perfect to anyone else. Konako lifted a boulder. The stone left the ground, and her arms tensed without shaking. She lowered it, then lifted again. Her breath stayed even. She didn't glance at anyone. She never did. Akeno's fingers stretched and guided steady lines of violet downrange into targets. No crack of thunder, no sudden flare. Controlled, even, exact. Rias watched her for a long beat and nodded once. Intervals, Rias called to Asia. You have 30 seconds to bring a partner back from red to green. I'll call times. Asia flinched, then straightened. Why yes. I clapped once. Turtle. Fall down. Issei gaped. What do you mean fall? I tapped his knee. He folded like paper with a shout and face planted into the dirt. Kind of fast, I said. Asia scurried to him and set her hands on his shoulder. The green glow wrapped him. Her breaths were steady at first, then sped up as she pushed more. Issei squirmed. Hold still, Issei, Rias said. Why yes, Baku. 15 seconds, Rias counted. The last throb of green settled at the 30 mark. Asia shook out her wrists and tried to hide her nerves behind a smile. You barely made time, Rias said. Again. Why yes. Hey. Issei yelped. Can we make me fall less hard this time? No, I said, and tapped his other knee. He ate dirt again. Asia gasped and hustled back into position, glow returning, timing herself without being told. Kaiba kept cutting the lane smooth, but I saw the same notch in the rhythm. I walked till I paralleled his pattern, eyes on his shoulders. He saw me without looking. His next pass sharpened. His follow-up turn was perfect. The pass after that drifted. He brought it back a breath later and masked it in a flourish, blade tip drawing a line no one needed. I stepped into his path and he pulled up mid-stride, blade shifting to guard instinctively. Yup, I said. You're off. He smiled politely. Am I? Yup. He lowered the sword a fraction. I'm fine. Yup, I said. You're saying that too fast. He breathed out, the smile still there. I'll focus. He flowed around me and resumed the run. The rhythm held for 6 passes. On the 7th, his foot hit hard and corrected. He hit it again. Akeno drifted closer while pretending not to. Era. Meliodas-kun watching Kaiba-kun so closely. Is there trouble? Yup, I said. Kaiba finished a set and halted, sword flat at his side. He looked our way without moving his head. No trouble. Akeno's smile thinned, then returned to bright. If you say so. Rias called, Kaiba. Partner drills. With Meliodas. He came without hesitation. His sword rose in a clean guard. I let my hands stay in my pockets and tilted my head to one side. Yup, I said. Don't hold back. He nodded and stepped in. Speed. Clean angles. The first cut would have carved a rook in half. I slid in place, his edge shaved a hair off the space where my neck was and met nothing. The follow-up came without delay, 3-step flow into a thrust. I turned my shoulder, let his point pass under my arm, and touched his wrist with 2 fingers. He reset instantly and came again with a low sweep meant to change my base. I lifted my foot and let him take the dirt. Better, I said. He drew back 3 paces and his foot dug in more than he meant to. He corrected, kicked back into rhythm, and didn't show a reaction on his face. I saw it anyway. He came again and forced himself to add weight to each step like he wanted to feel his body working the ground. We traded 10 sets. He didn't make a mistake you could write down. He still looked tight from somewhere behind the eyes. When I stepped into his guard and tagged his chest with a finger, he didn't blink. He reset and asked for more. Rias watched without interfering. Akeno eased back to her lane and resumed arcs, eyes still coming our way every 3rd second. Konako didn't look at us, but her ears twitched once and then didn't move again. Asia's 3rd timed heel landed at 27 seconds. Rias said, better. Again. By midday, Issei was sweaty and trembling and had said boost, so many times he sounded like he was apologizing to the gauntlet. Asia held steady through it with a few shaky breaths that she smoothed out on her own. Kaiba kept the blade work crisp while his expression went neutral. Konako broke 2 more boulders, ate 2 more cookies, and waited in between without asking for anything. Akeno stopped a single arc 1 inch from a target and held it there without shaking for a full minute because that's what Rias asked for. Rias didn't move much at all. She followed everything. Break, she said finally. Issei dropped flat on his back and spread his arms. I'm dead. Not yet, I said. Asia knelt next to him with water and a towel and set both down with careful hands. Please sip slowly, Issei-san. He obeyed. He didn't complain about the taste. Progress. Konako sat on the shade line and stared at a cookie wrapper like it had betrayed her. Kaiba wiped his sword clean and resheathed it. He turned away from the group, not far, just enough to face the barrier line. Akeno poured tea and brought cups to Rias, to me, to Asia, to Kaiba. He noticed late and smiled the same polite smile. Thank you, he said. Of course, Akeno answered. I walked over and stopped 2 steps behind him. You're tight. He didn't turn. Am I? Yup. Your shoulder, then your heel. Then your breath, then your heel. His hand flexed on the scabbard once, then stilled. I didn't notice. Yup. Silence sat for a stretch. He took a slow drink of the tea and, for a moment, didn't swallow. Akeno's voice drifted from behind us. Ara, Ara. Meliodas-kun, you're being very attentive. Yup, I said. Rias stepped over. Kaiba. Anything to report? He faced her, posture perfect. No, Baku. I'm fine. Rias held his eyes for 3 seconds. We don't gain anything by hiding injuries or distractions. I understand, he said, and bowed his head a fraction. I'm not injured. Her gaze stayed steady. Then go again with Konako after break. Yes. He returned to look through the barrier like he was checking a line no one else could see. The quiet sat again, not thick, just present. Issei groaned himself upright with Asia's help. I can keep going, he said. Yup, I said. You'll keep going. He looked like he wanted to argue and then didn't. Rias lifted her hand, and break ended. Round 2, she said. Konako and Kaiba took the center lane together. She dropped into stance, fists up. He drew half an inch of blade and then closed the sheath again, choosing empty hands to match her. Ready, he said. Konako nodded. They went slow first. Testing. Kaiba's feet moved in a circle while Konako cut straight lines. He tried to draw her into chasing a shoulder, she didn't chase. He changed timing, she didn't fall for it. When he committed to a step in, she stuck his thigh with a quick shot and forced him to check his pace. He didn't flinch. He answered with a low sweep that met her forearm and didn't move it. Rias called, increase. They did. Konako's power came up. Kaiba's speed and angle changes sharpened. He changed target levels twice in one pass and nearly drew her guard short. Nearly. She set her feet and spiked him off. He rolled his ankle and hit it with a clean fall. Good, I said. Again. They didn't need me to say it. They were already there. On the far edge, Akeno moved into sustained output drills. 3 targets at staggered range. Low. Mid. High. She released measured bolts that hit each center and then paused. Hit, pause, hit, pause, hit. Rias nodded each time and adjusted the intervals by 1 count here and there. Akeno never made it look hard. Asia rotated to me. Timer, Rias said to her. 35 seconds. Meliodas, give her a moderate case. Yup. I tapped my chest twice and let my arm fall limp at the elbow. Asia flinched. I'm sorry. Don't apologize, I said, and knelt so she could reach. Her hands lit. Warmth sank in. This time her breath didn't shake in the middle. She reached the end at 34 and exhaled in relief. Again, Rias said. Asia nodded and didn't look away. Halfway through the second cycle, Issei yelled, boost, too loud and face planted again when his knee locked up. Idiot, Konako said without looking. Why you don't have to say it like that, Issei mumbled into the dirt. Yup, I said. Stop agreeing with her. Yup. By late afternoon, everyone's pace had changed. Konako's arms had a tremor she beat down by brute will. Akeno's last release hovered a little less steady than the first, but she forced it flat. Issei's boosts came slower, each one landed cleaner. Asia shaved 3 seconds off her slowest interval. Rias didn't smile, but her voice got lighter. Kaiba, last set with me, she said. He stepped in without question. She didn't draw a weapon. She lifted her hand and formed 3 small spheres, tiny crimson points. He tracked them, then tracked her shoulders, then tracked her feet. They exchanged without contact, each pass a test. Rias feinted a strike that would have tagged his cheek. He didn't blink. Enough, she said after 10 exchanges. He bowed his head a fraction. Thank you. Rias turned to the group. That's it. Cool down. Konako sat down exactly where she was and opened a new package of cookies. Akeno came over with towels and tea. Issei groaned through his stretches like he was dying. Asia corrected his form and made him hold the counts anyway. He obeyed her without arguing. I watched Kaiba again. He stepped to the barrier line and pretended to fix a strap on his glove. He wasn't fixing anything. His eyes were elsewhere. I walked over and stood beside him. You're thinking too hard. He answered without looking. Am I? Yup. A pause. Then, quiet, old habits. Yup. He breathed in and out. I'll adjust. Yup. Rias raised her voice. Tomorrow we'll continue at the same time. Dinner at the club room tonight if anyone wants it. Why yes. Issei shouted and then fell over during a hamstring stretch. Konako chewed silently and then stood without a word. Akeno covered a small smile behind a towel. Asia offered Issei a hand and he took it without looking at anyone. We walked back to the club room together. The barrier lowered behind us and the air turned normal. Inside, the room smelled like tea and polish. Akeno set water to boil. Konako went to her cushion and sat with a cookie like it was a ritual. Issei slumped on the couch and tried to look dignified. Asia put a glass of water in his hands before he could ask. He drank it all and didn't do anything stupid. Progress again. Rias took her seat and unfolded a set of notes. Report. Kaiba stood straight. Speed patterns and partner work complete. No injuries. Rias' eyes didn't leave him. Issues. He held her gaze. No, Baku. She waited 1 second, then turned. Konako. Still lifting, Konako said. More weight tomorrow. Akeno slid tea to each of us like she always did. Sustained output stable. Ready to increase range on your signal, Rias. Rias nodded. Asia. Asia flinched. Improved by 3 seconds at best, Rias Onisama. I can do better. You did well, Rias said. We'll keep pushing you until you can do it without shaking. Asia nodded fast. Why yes. Issei. Issei sat up straighter. Boost intervals cleaner. Less collapsing. I mean, I still collapsed a lot, but less. Accurate, Rias said. He puffed up. Hat. Don't get cocky, she added. He slumped. Right. Rias looked at me. Notes. I grinned. Yup. Issei needs more core work. Asia's hands start to shake at 28 seconds, I'll fix that. Akeno wants harder drills. Konako will break the new boulder tomorrow. Kaiba's rhythm is wrong. We'll fix that too. Kaiba's eyes flicked to me. He didn't speak. Rias didn't either for a beat. Then, Kaiba. He met her eyes again. I'll adjust. She held his gaze for longer this time. Then she nodded once. Good. Dismissed for now. Food in 20 minutes. We broke into smaller circles. Akeno and Rias set out plates. Konako watched the plates with calm certainty. Issei complained about how his legs hurt and then shut up when Asia lined up 2 ice packs and a towel and told him to sit on the floor for better posture. He obeyed. Kaiba took a seat by the window and looked out at nothing. I walked over and leaned my hip on the sill. You ever sit? I asked. He blinked. I am sitting. Yup, I said. The rest of you, I meant. A small breath left him. It could have been a laugh if he let it be one. I suppose not. Yup. I looked out the same window. Just the yard. Club hedges. The fence. Nothing else. You're thinking about something you don't want to share. He stayed still. I'll handle it. Yup. He surprised me by speaking again first. You were, very direct with Riser, he said. Yup. Thank you, he said. Simple. No weight added. Yup, I answered. Rias looked happy. He nodded. Akeno's voice carried. Dinner is ready. We moved to the table. The plates were neat. Sandwiches. Rice balls. A salad Konako ignored. Cookies Konako noticed. Tea. Rias didn't take the head of the table, she stood behind her chair until everyone sat and then sat last. Habit. Conversation stayed light for a while. Issei whined in a smaller voice and smiled when Asia pushed a plate closer to him. Konako ate like every bite tasted exactly the same, and that was the point. Akeno teased me by bending just a little too close when she refilled my tea, and I grinned up at her without blinking. She smiled back like she always did. Rias watched us all and didn't say anything about it. Kaiba ate with good posture and even movements. He answered when spoken to, offered polite responses, and left quiet stretches in between. His eyes drifted to the window twice. He stopped himself the third time. After dinner, Rias went over schedules. School as usual. Training same time. Patrols tomorrow evening. Kaiba, Konako, you'll take the west route. Issei and Asia, the east. Akeno, with me. Yes, Kaiba said. Konako nodded. Issei stiffened. Patrols? With Asia-chan. Rias looked at him evenly. Yes. He kicked his feet under the table and tried not to smile too hard. Asia ducked her head and clasped her hands. I'll do my best. Yup, I said. I'll tag along. Rias narrowed her eyes. You'll follow my assignments? I grinned wider. Yup. She rubbed her temple. Hopeless. We cleaned up. Asia insisted on doing more than necessary, and Akeno let her while guiding her through where things go without making a show of it. Konako took the cookie plate without asking. Issei tried to help and almost dropped a glass. I caught it. He thanked me without making it weird. Progress again. Kaiba put on his jacket and moved toward the door after the last plate went away. Walking home? I asked. Yes, he said. I like the air. Yup. I'll walk with you. He paused a half beat, then nodded. Of course. We stepped outside. The clubroom lights stayed warm behind us. The school grounds were quiet. The sky was clear. We walked without talking at first. Our shoes sounded the same on the path. At the gate, he slowed. I appreciate the offer, he said. But you don't need to watch me. I'm not, I said. I want to walk. He looked at me and then away. Right. We followed the sidewalk into town. The lamplight made steady circles on the pavement. A car passed and kept going. A cat watched from a wall and flicked its tail once. You're going to say you're fine again, I said. He exhaled. I'm managing. Yup. A woman on a bicycle passed us and nodded. We nodded back. He didn't fill the silence after that. I didn't either. At the next corner, he stopped. This is my way. Yup, I said. He stood there a second longer. Meliodas, he said, and left it hanging. Yup. Thank you, he said again, looking me in the eye this time. I grinned. Yup. He went his way. I watched him until he turned out of sight. Then I headed back. The clubroom was still open when I returned. Rias sat at her desk with a single lamp on. Akeno had left already. Konako had gone home. Issei and Asia had left together earlier, Asia talking softly about cooking rice the right way when your hands are tired. I walked in without knocking. Rias didn't look surprised. How is he? She asked. Yup, I said. He's saying he's fine. Her eyes lowered. I thought so. I leaned on the couch back. You already know. I know my knight, she said. He will speak when he is ready. I'll watch him until then. Yup, I said. I told him the same thing. Without the watch part. She set her pen down. You notice a lot. Yup. She looked at me for a few seconds and then stood. Go home. Training tomorrow. I grinned. Yup. I opened the door. Rias. You looked happy, I said. She held my eyes. Yes. I left her there with the lamp. The hall was empty. The air outside was cool. The walk back to the Hyudo house took as long as it needed to, and nothing interrupted it. At the gate, Issei's light was on. Asia's soft voice reached the street when I passed. She was scolding him gently for not drinking enough water. He complained and obeyed at the same time. I kept moving and didn't bother them. Back in my room, I sat on the bed and watched the ceiling for a minute. No plans. No big moves. Just the next day. Yup, I said to no one, and closed my eyes.